My wife said I needed help, that I was paranoid. But when I found her lover's name buried under a contact called Nina, I stopped questioning my sanity and started questioning everything else. I used to think silence meant peace. Our house sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac, wrapped in ivy and the kind of stillness you only get in quiet suburbs. I thought we'd made it. 2 kids, stable jobs, Sunday mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles. My wife, Mara, used to hum while she folded laundry. The sound of it used to feel like home. That stopped sometime around last February. I noticed it first in the way she touched her phone, suddenly with her body turned slightly away. How her laughter, once so open, became quieter, tighter, like it wasn't meant for me anymore. I chalked it up to stress. Her job was demanding. She managed a team of analysts at a biotech firm, and they were going through layoffs. I asked if everything was all right. She smiled and said, "You always worry too much." Then came the headaches. The nights she'd retreat to the guest room because she needed sleep. The early mornings where she'd already be showered and dressed before I even opened my eyes. She claimed she was taking control of her routine, that it was part of some new self-care thing. I wanted to believe her. But something kept whispering under it all, something sick and sour that made my stomach coil whenever she smiled too quickly or laughed at texts she wouldn't show me. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and reached for her. The bed was cold. I padded down the hallway and found her in the kitchen, sitting in the dark, phone in hand. She didn't notice me at first. Her face was lit up by the screen, soft and focused in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Mara," I said. She jumped like I'd caught her stealing. Then the mask slid on. She laughed, said she couldn't sleep, that she was just scrolling through Pinterest. Pinterest didn't make you smile like that. Pinterest didn't make you flinch when your husband touched your shoulder. I started watching her more closely after that. Call it paranoia. Call it intuition. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure husband who reads too much into everything. But when you've lived with someone for over a decade, you feel the shift before you can prove it. A week later, I checked her car's odometer. She told me she went to the gym after work, but the gym was 5 miles away. Her mileage showed 12. Every single time. So I started keeping a log. Quietly. No accusations. Just facts. Time she left. Time she got home. The mileage. The mood. The makeup. Then came the final straw. She left her work laptop open one night when she wanted to take a shower. Outlook was open. A calendar invite caught my eye. Meeting with Dee at Larchmont Cafe. It had been recurring for weeks. Always around the same time she said she was working late. I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew that cafe. It was 10 miles in the opposite direction from her office. I clicked into the event and saw nothing else. Just that one cryptic note. No details. No last name. Just a letter. D. My hands were shaking. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something broke in me that night. Not in a dramatic, crashing way. Just a slow, splintering crack. A part of me died in the silence, sitting there in that chair while the shower ran upstairs like white noise over a war zone. I needed to know more before I did anything. Because if I was wrong, I'd destroy us. But if I was right, I wanted her to feel it. I needed her to know what it was like to doubt every memory, to lie awake at night wondering if you were going insane, or if the person beside you already knew you were right. I sat in my car across from Larchmont Cafe for 2 hours. It was raining, not hard, but that kind of soft, steady drizzle that turns the world into a blur. Mara's meeting was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. I got there early. Parked where I could see the front entrance, my seat reclined, head up. I felt ridiculous, like a teenager spying on his crush. Or a madman. The clock hit 6:15. Then 6:30. At 6:42, I saw her. She walked in alone. No hesitation. No looking over her shoulder. Just a quick glance at her phone before she pushed open the door and disappeared inside. My chest tightened. 2 minutes later, a man followed. Mid-40s. Tall, business casual, with a gray satchel and a folded umbrella. He didn't greet her at the door. Didn't kiss her. Just walked in and ordered a drink. I stayed for another 45 minutes. They never sat together. Mara sat near the window with her laptop open, sipping tea and occasionally typing. The man, D, I assumed, took a call outside and left before she did. Maybe he wasn't D. Or maybe he was just a coworker. A colleague from one of her projects. I drove home that night soaked in confusion, still trying to believe the worst. But the pieces weren't fitting the way they should if this was what I thought it was. Cheaters don't sit in public coffee shops alone for an hour. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of. I emailed her assistant. It was stupid and reckless, and I masked it as a surprise anniversary idea to make sure I didn't blow everything up. I asked about Mara's schedule, if she had been working late on those days, if she had mentioned any favorite spots, especially Larchmont. Just casual, husband stuff. The assistant responded within 10 minutes. Sweet, friendly. Oh yes, Mara loves that place. It's kind of her thinking spot. She goes there when she needs quiet time away from the office to work on reports or decks. She usually blocks it off as a meeting just so people don't schedule over it. Hope that helps. My stomach turned. I hadn't expected the clarity to sting more than the suspicion. I looked at the logs I'd kept, all the mileage, the notes, the subtle behavioral shifts. They felt flimsy now, like I'd built a conspiracy out of shadows. Maybe she had changed, but maybe it wasn't about another man. Maybe it was stress, like she said. Hormones. Career burnout. Things I should have been more supportive about instead of sneaking around like a detective in my own damn marriage. That night, I found her asleep on the couch, a half-finished bowl of soup on the coffee table, and a book open on her chest. Her face looked pale, exhausted. I stood there watching her for longer than I should have, feeling something collapse quietly inside me. What if I was the problem? What if I'd been so afraid of losing her that I started trying to catch her doing something she wasn't? The next day, I cleaned out the notes I'd hidden in my phone. I deleted the odometer photos, the screenshots, even the receipts I'd taken pictures of. I told myself I was letting go, trusting her again. That's what marriage was, right? Choosing trust even when it was hard. She smiled more that week. Not a lot, but more. She made lasagna one night and put on that soft jazz she used to play when we were first dating. We made love for the first time in nearly 2 months. I told her I missed her. She didn't say it back, but she touched my face afterward and kissed my cheek. It felt like hope. Fragile, awkward hope. I told myself we were okay again. And for a little while we were. Until I took the kids to the aquarium the following weekend and left my wallet in her car. I went back to grab it and found her phone still plugged into the charger. Unlocked. Wide open. No passcode. And there, in the Messages app, pinned at the top, was a thread labeled D. And what I read made the blood in my veins go cold. There's something unnatural about reading your wife's most intimate words, meant for someone else. I stood in the driveway with her phone in my hands, heart pounding in my ears, the car door still ajar. The kids were inside the house, still giddy from the jellyfish exhibit. But I didn't hear their voices. I didn't hear anything. The messages weren't explicit. There were no nudes. No I love yous. But it was worse than that. It was casual. Familiar. Intimate in the way that says, this isn't new. D, how was your night? Mara, quiet. He's trying harder. Makes it worse somehow. D, the guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. Just that you're still too good for the cage you're in. Mara, sometimes I wish I could rip the roof off this life. Just walk into yours and never come back. There were weeks of this. Months. References to meetings they'd had. Hotels I didn't recognize. A late-night train to a beachside Airbnb just to talk. And there it was in one message dated 6 weeks ago. Mara, he saw me at Larchmont. Didn't say anything, but I felt it. I need to be careful. My throat closed up. She knew I was suspicious. She saw me. She knew, and instead of stopping, she just got better at hiding. I don't remember walking back into the house. I don't remember putting her phone down or saying goodnight to the kids. I just remember standing in the shower an hour later, fully clothed, the hot water scalding my neck while my thoughts spun like a broken carousel. I was right. I was right the whole time. The cafe. The distance. The headaches. The new lingerie she claimed was for herself. The morning she came home with damp hair and said she went swimming at the gym, only for me to find her swimsuit still dry in the hamper. Every breadcrumb had been real, and I buried them because she made me doubt myself. I'd loved her so much, I gaslit myself. That night, I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. She lay beside me, peaceful and unaware. At 5:42 a.m., she stirred and reached for my hand under the sheets. I let her fingers wrap around mine like nothing had changed, like she hadn't spent months dragging my heart behind her like a broken toy. Because now I needed time. Time to figure out how to burn the world she built without lighting a match too soon. The first thing I did was make copies of everything. Screenshots. Photos. I forwarded the text to a burner email, along with everything I could find from the cloud backup she hadn't bothered to encrypt. Then I booked a consultation with a lawyer downtown. Not one of those slick TV faces, someone quiet, cold, recommended by a friend who had been through hell and come out teeth-bared on the other side. I didn't cry. Not once. What I felt wasn't heartbreak. It was something colder. A death, maybe. The quiet kind. The kind that happens in the soul when something sacred gets mocked and twisted into a lie. Mara didn't notice the shift at first. She was careful, but not as careful as she used to be. I think she believed she'd made it past the storm, that I'd returned to my docile, trusting self. She was sweet again, more affectionate. She made plans for the holidays, asked if we should renew our vows in the spring. I smiled, said maybe, and I watched how she'd step out to run errands and come back with damp hair and a faint new perfume. Watched how she guarded her phone again, even while pretending she wasn't. She started humming when she did the laundry again, and it made my skin crawl, because now I knew what she looked like when she was lying, and I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to give her something better. A stage. A spotlight. An audience. Because if she wanted a second life so badly, I'd make sure the first one crumbled in front of everyone she ever lied to. I thought I had him. I followed the wrong man for 3 weeks. Staked out hotels. Tracked his car. And the whole time, the Betrayal affair was happening behind a different name, on a second phone, with someone I'd never even seen. You don't rush something like this. Revenge, when done right, is like architecture. It's blueprints and patience. Not explosions, erosion. You don't kick the house down. You let the foundation rot, then smile while the roof caves in. It started with observation. I studied her the way you study an animal in the wild. Patterns, routines, little tells. Mara thought I'd gone soft again. Maybe she even felt sorry for me. She'd kiss me on the cheek in the morning, pat my chest like I was some faithful dog waiting by the door. I let her. Because the more she believed I'd folded, the more blind she became. The first brick I pulled was social. Quietly, strategically, I began reaching out to our mutual friends, the ones she liked best. Her work friend Tessa, our neighbor Alicia, even her younger sister, Kaya. I called them, texted, set up lunches, casual stuff, under the guise of reconnecting. Checking in. I've been off lately. Trying to be more present. People love a man who's trying. I never said a word about the affair. That would have been premature. Instead, I let slip little things, a vague sense of concern, moments of emotional vulnerability that hinted at cracks, but never screamed blame. She's been distant, but I think she's just tired. I feel like I've been missing something lately. She says everything's fine. So maybe it's me. It created a narrative. Not a damning one. Not yet. Just enough tension to make people notice her silences a little more. Her glances at her phone. Her unexplained absences. By the time the real story came out, they wouldn't question it. They'd say, "Oh, that makes sense now." The second phase was legal. I went back to the lawyer, Mr. Halston. Gray suit. Minimal expression. A man who'd clearly seen worse than me and learned not to flinch. We sat across from each other while he took notes, occasionally looking up with this flat, professional sympathy I found oddly comforting. "I'm not ready to file yet," I told him. "I want to build leverage first." He nodded once, no judgment. "What kind of leverage?" I laid it out. The texts, the hotel stays, the calendar invites, the digital trail. He listened carefully and then said, "Infidelity still matters in this state, especially if it impacts custody or community assets. If you get proof of funds spent on the affair, anything financial, it becomes a pattern of marital misconduct. That's what you want. Marital misconduct." I held on to that phrase like it was a weapon. That week, I ordered a second tracker, a discreet little GPS tag the size of a quarter. I planted it in her car's trunk lining. I also synced her laptop's cloud folder to a drive I controlled, so every file she opened at work silently mirrored into mine. I learned how to do this on a Reddit forum that probably shouldn't exist, posted by a guy who once caught his wife planning a move-out date with her affair partner before she'd even served papers. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was mapping her world, understanding it, studying its weak points. That's when I found the bank statements. They weren't on our shared account, of course not. But Mara had a separate credit card she used for work stuff. I knew the login. I'd never used it before, never needed to. But the moment I signed in, I saw it. Hotel charges, rideshare payments, 2 flights labeled as client engagement that matched weekends I'd taken the kids to my parents. One of them was Valentine's Day. I stared at that charge, Ocean View Suites, 2 nights, February 13th to 15th, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't sad. I was clarified. It's a strange thing, to realize you no longer want someone who still sleeps next to you. That the warmth you used to crave now feels like a trespass. Every night she curled into me. It was like watching a stranger wear my wife's skin. The third phase was narrative control. I wrote a letter. Not a rant. Not a scream into the void. A curated confession, written like a journal entry. Raw. Quiet. Devastating. I didn't name her directly. I just told the story of a man who tried to save his marriage, who gaslit himself into silence, who discovered the betrayal not through one explosive reveal, but through 1,000 tiny cracks. I posted it anonymously in a private group for betrayed spouses. It blew up. Hundreds of comments. Dozens of DMs. Some people guessed the full truth. Others asked if I'd forgiven her. One person, a woman, wrote, "She'll never understand what she cost you, but make sure she feels it." That stuck with me, because pain is fleeting, but consequence lasts. I was almost ready. I just needed one more thing. Proof of her in his presence. Physical, undeniable, time-stamped. That came 2 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon. Her GPS showed she'd parked near a boutique hotel across town. I drove there, parked a block away, and waited. An hour later, I saw her walk out. Not with D. Alone. But 10 minutes after she left, he stepped out the front door, adjusted his shirt collar, and walked in the opposite direction. I had the photos. And now, I had the story. Not the one she told me. The one she earned. I was days away from pulling the trigger. Everything was in place. The photos, the finances, the timeline. I'd already drafted the email to her firm's HR, attaching the proof of misconduct on company time. My lawyer said I could file the divorce without warning and request an emergency hearing for temporary custody, citing moral grounds. It would be clean, swift, public. But first, I needed to see him. I didn't just want to humiliate Mara. I wanted to know who she risked everything for. What kind of man makes a woman burn her house down from the inside? So I waited. I tracked his phone through the number she'd saved, routed through a virtual contact, but tied to a real account once I cross-referenced the GPS data. Every Thursday at 8:30 a.m., he went to the same coffee shop in Midtown, a place called Arlo's, 2 blocks from his office. I drove in early and sat at a window seat with a newspaper I didn't read, just watching, studying. When he walked in, I knew instantly it was him. There's a way people move when they think no one's watching, loose, self-assured. He ordered black coffee, typed on his phone, and smiled at something on the screen. I wondered if it was her. Part of me expected to feel rage, jealousy, the kind of primal fury you read about in crime stories. But what I felt instead was hollow, like watching a stranger walk off with your luggage at the airport. The things inside were yours, but they didn't know that. And they didn't care. I followed him out. Not closely, just enough to confirm the building he worked in, the name printed on his keycard as he buzzed in. David Langston, VP of Product Development. Older than me by maybe 6 or 7 years. Graying at the temples. No ring. Calm face. The kind of man who takes up space without trying. That afternoon, I typed his name into his search bar and opened a dozen tabs. LinkedIn, company bios, conference talks. Then, something strange, a personal blog, sparse entries. The usual corporate self-help noise, until I found one dated 4 months ago. When people grieve a life they've never had, it can be harder than grieving the one they lost. It wasn't long, just a meditation on regret, missing out, watching someone you love go back to the life that was killing her. That night, I went to bed restless. I lay beside Mara as she slept, her breathing slow and even, and tried to picture what it would look like the moment I exposed her. The look on her face when she realized I'd been watching her the whole time. And then, I froze. Something small, insignificant. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand, and out of habit, I glanced over. The name that flashed wasn't David. It was Nina. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, and opened her contact list. There was no David. Not in the last calls, not in the pinned messages. Nothing. But Nina? Pinned. Frequent. Hundreds of messages. I opened the thread, expecting the usual girlfriend banter, clothes, work, venting. But what I found stopped me cold. Because Nina wasn't a woman. It was him. It was David. Only not David. As I scrolled, my mouth went dry. There were voice notes, low, quiet, undeniably male. Photos. A selfie in a bathroom mirror, shirtless, with half his face cropped out. My brain scrambled to make sense of it. To match this man, this image, with the version I'd followed through Midtown. And then it clicked. David Langston wasn't the man Mara was seeing. He was her cover story. The real man, the one she'd saved under Nina, was someone else entirely. A man who used a burner number. Who spoke in code. Who never used his real name in any saved contact. Which meant I had the wrong man. I had followed the wrong man. The photos I took. The hotel stakeout. The carefully plotted downfall, all of it built around the wrong person. And she never suspected a thing, because I never got close. I felt sick. The GPS I installed, it was useless. She'd taken ride shares to meet him. Switched phones when she wanted to talk. There were even references in the messages. I'm using the second line. I'll text you from Nina. My whole plan. The meticulous collapse I engineered. It was hollow. Because I hadn't been playing chess. I'd been playing myself. I stared at her sleeping form that night with a numbness I can't describe. Not fury. Not grief. Just a kind of quiet horror. The kind that comes when you realize you've been standing in an empty room shouting at shadows. I wanted to wake her, demand the truth, tear through the lies and scream until I saw something real in her face. But I didn't. Instead, I lay back down, closed my eyes, and for the first time since this all began, I realized something worse than betrayal. She was better at this than I was. And now, if I wanted to finish what I started, I'd have to become something else entirely. The first plan was surgical, precise, designed to destroy Mara's reputation, her career, her comfort, without ever raising my voice. But now, I was chasing a ghost. The man I thought was the threat wasn't real. The affair hadn't followed a pattern I could predict. It had slipped through cracks I didn't know existed. So I changed course. No more lawyers. No quiet divorce. No spreadsheets of misconduct. If I was going to dismantle her life, it couldn't be sterile. It had to hurt. I started with her calendar. She had one synced across her devices, personal, not corporate. For errands, hair appointments, wellness days. I noticed a new recurring event, studio session, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Mara wasn't an artist. She dabbled in pottery in college, but I hadn't seen her make anything in years. So I followed her again. Carefully. No GPS, no digital trace. Just distance and instinct. She parked near a warehouse in the arts district, the kind of place converted into co-ops and private lofts. She entered through a side door I couldn't see into. No signage. No obvious cameras. I waited for over an hour, and when she left, she looked transformed. Hair tied back, cheeks flushed, this eerie softness in her posture I hadn't seen since we were 24 and naive enough to believe in each other. But she wasn't alone. The man with her wasn't David. He was younger, 30s, maybe. Tin jacket. Tall, lean, with an intensity in his gaze that unnerved me. I didn't recognize him from anywhere. No online presence. No clear ties to her work or social life. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. But there was something in the way they walked side by side, like a rhythm practiced over time. Back home, I dug harder. I installed screen mirroring software on the guest tablet she rarely used, hoping she'd log into one of her cloud accounts while distracted. It took 4 days, but she finally synced her drive. Hidden in a nested folder labeled Wellness Docs were dozens of audio files. Recordings. I clicked one. Static. Then her voice. But she wasn't speaking to the man. She was talking about me. He's quieter lately. Not in a good way. I think he suspects more than he lets on. But I don't feel afraid. Just watched. Like I'm living next to a stranger who remembers how to mimic my husband. I sat frozen, letting her voice echo through the room. It wasn't laced with guilt or fear. It was detached. Analytical. He used to ask questions. Now he just observes. Like he's studying the death of something. And I don't think he's planning to fix it. She knew. Not the full extent. Not the files or the trackers. But she felt it. And she didn't care. In the next clip, I heard the man, the real one. You're addicted to the version of him that used to love you. But that man doesn't live there anymore. His voice was soft, measured, and infuriating. I'm not telling you to leave. I'm telling you to see that you already have. I paused the audio and stared into the dark reflection on my monitor. My jaw clenched so tight I heard the bone click. That was when the plan came to me. If she wanted to believe I was a ghost of the man she married, I'd become one. I started documenting things she didn't know I knew. Her lies, her schedules, her slips in conversation. I planned to leak the affair anonymously. Send the recordings to her HR, the burner texts to her parents. Forward the financials to the ethics committee at her firm. But not all at once. Over time. Weeks. Months, even. A slow unraveling. So she'd never know where it came from, or when it would stop. But then came the first problem. Kaya, Mara's sister, showed up unannounced on a Tuesday night. I was working in the garage when she knocked, holding takeout and a six-pack like old times. I just wanted to check in, she said, too casually. You've been off. I played the part. Small smiles. Tired sighs. I said we were working through some stuff. Nothing dramatic. She stayed for an hour. Talked about her job, her new dog, some date that ghosted her. But there was something behind her eyes. Like she was trying to see deeper. She watched me the way I used to watch Mara. Then she said, "You know she still loves you, right?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure if it was a question or a warning. The second problem came the next morning. I woke up to find Mara already dressed, keys in hand, purse over her shoulder. She kissed my cheek. Smiled. "I'll be back late," she said. "Studio's running a group session tonight." My heart rate spiked. She never mentioned group sessions. When she left, I checked the mirror tablet. Nothing in her drive. But her calendar had changed. Studio session canceled. She'd lied. Again. I rushed to the warehouse. But it was dark. Locked. No sign of her car. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I sat in my car for over an hour, gripping the steering wheel, cold sweat running down my neck. She was getting better. Smarter. More careful. The third problem came the following day when the HR email bounced back. Blocked. Somehow, she had anticipated me. I realized then, she was already preparing for war. Maybe she didn't know how close I'd come. Maybe she didn't know about the files. But she sensed the storm. And she wasn't running. She was arming herself. And suddenly, for the first time since all this began, I wasn't sure I was going to win. She didn't care that I knew. She wasn't scared. She was ready. That's when I realized, if I wanted to bring her down, I couldn't just catch her lying. I had to make her admit the truth in her own voice. The last move had to be hers. That was the conclusion I came to after 30 sleepless nights and 3 failed attempts at revenge. I'd spent months tightening a noose around her world, but every time I pulled, Mara slipped through. She was too careful, too adaptive. She didn't panic, she evolved. But no one can evolve faster than the truth. So I changed my plan again. I stopped trying to catch her in the act, and instead began crafting a reality she couldn't escape from. Because it wasn't built on suspicion. It was built on confession. It started with the kids. I took them to my parents' house on a Friday under the excuse of helping with a home project. Mara didn't question it. She was in a good mood that morning. She wore a new sweater and had that distant, distracted smile she gave when her mind was somewhere else, or with someone else. That night, I stayed home alone. I cleaned the house, vacuumed, dusted the mantel, cleared the table of clutter. Everything neat, everything ready. I set the dining table for 2. Her favorite wine on the counter. A candle lit. Not romantic, just centered. At 7:43 p.m., she walked in and paused like she'd entered the wrong house. "What's this?" "We need to talk," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. She poured a glass of wine, but didn't drink it. We sat in silence for a moment that stretched like a wire between us. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked one question. "Who is he?" Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't flinch. She didn't even look surprised. Just tired. "I don't think you want the answer," she said softly. "I already know it," I replied. "I just want to hear you say it." That cracked something. Not big. Just a tremor. Her fingers curled around the base of her wine glass, knuckles white. "It's over," she said. "It's been over." "For how long?" She looked at the floor. "A year," she whispered. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of every lie she'd told in the last 12 months. Every night, she came home late. Every time she touched me out of guilt instead of love. I stood and placed a folder on the table. Photos, text messages, financial records, audio logs, the whole mosaic of her second life, printed, dated, cataloged. Her hands trembled when she opened it. "You think this ruins me?" she asked, her voice colder now. Defensive. "You think you'll get the kids, the house, the moral high ground?" "I don't want any of it," I said. She blinked. What? I don't want the house, or the alimony, or full custody. You can have everything you built, just not the mask you wore to build it. She stared at me, suddenly unsure of her footing. I sent copies to your firm, I added. Not the affair itself, just the ethics violations, the misuse of travel funds, the falsified client engagements. She went pale. I was careful. You weren't careful enough. I didn't need to catch you cheating. I just needed to catch you stealing. Mara sank back in her chair, the air leaving her lungs in a single, broken breath. For the first time since all this began, she looked small. Mortal. I loved you, she whispered, like that could still mean something. No, I said. You loved who I used to be. And when that stopped serving you, you built a life around my silence. I left her there at the table, the folder still open, her eyes finally staring back at her. The fallout moved quickly. Her job opened an internal review. She wasn't fired, not yet, but she was suspended. Her name, once the golden child of the department, became a whispered cautionary tale. We filed for divorce 2 weeks later. No courtroom drama, no public mudslinging. I took the car and a modest share of our joint savings. She kept the house. The kids split their time between us. She tried, once, to reframe the narrative. Told a few friends I'd gone cold, that I'd given up. But she underestimated the seeds I'd already planted. People had seen her absence long before I named it. The mask didn't fit anymore. Kaya reached out to me after the dust settled. Said she was sorry, that she never really understood what was happening, but that now she did. You didn't deserve that, she said. I think, I told her, deserve has nothing to do with anything anymore. The days got quieter, emptier in some ways, easier in others. I started running in the mornings, cooking more. I picked up the guitar I hadn't touched since college. The kids adjusted. Slowly. They still asked about us sometimes. Why it happened. Whether we'd ever be together again. I told them the truth. That sometimes people change in ways they don't come back from. And sometimes, letting go is the only kind of love left. One night, months later, I stood in the doorway of my apartment, alone, a beer in one hand, and realized I didn't miss her. Not the way I thought I would. Not the way I feared. Because what I'd been mourning wasn't Mara. It was the version of myself I used to be with her. And now, finally, he was gone. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.